Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really interesting dynamic playing out right now in the conversation around immigration enforcement.
Yeah.
We're going to sort of unpack a recent news item that highlights this potential push and pull,
Yeah.
within a specific political view on things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And our way in here is this CNN Politics article. It's from Sunday, March 16th, 2025.
Okay.
The title is GOP Senator Defends Trump Deportations, but says, "We expect the executive branch to follow the law." We've got some key bits from it to really dig into.
Okay, so that headline itself, it kind of sets up a puzzle, doesn't it?
It really does.
You've got a Republican senator, seems like he's backing the idea of, well, faster deportations, suggests wanting quick action.
Right. Decisive.
But then, almost in the same breath, there's this really strong emphasis on the executive branch needing to stick to the rules, follow the legal framework.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder what's really going on there, the nuances.
Well, I think what's interesting right off the bat is how Senator Round's statement might show this balancing act, maybe even a tension, like you said, within the wider Republican thinking on immigration. There's often that desire, to look tough on enforcement,
Sure.
but that's also paired with typically conservative ideas about the rule of law, limited government power. This statement seems to be trying to walk that line.
Right. Navigating tricky ground. So the article focuses on Senator Mike Rounds talking to Jake Tapper on CNN.
That's the one.
And a key bit was when they got onto the Trump administration mentioning wartime powers to speed up deportations.
Yeah, that phrase jumps out.
And Round's answer was, we will use whatever the legal resources are to protect the American people.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How he immediately links that idea. Accelerated deportations, possibly using these broader wartime powers, straight back to needing legal resources.
Yeah.
It kind of suggests he knows, maybe implicitly, that using powers like that could raise questions about, well, where the lines are for executive authority here.
Wartime powers, yeah, that's a big term. Domestically, it usually means like extra powers for the executive branch in a war or, a national emergency.
Expanded authority.
Applying that to immigration enforcement, that's a huge legal question by itself. The article doesn't spell out exactly which powers, but just saying it signals a potential shift, maybe towards quicker, more streamlined procedures.
Exactly. And invoking wartime powers can often mean, fewer steps, fewer checks, more executive say-so. So when Senator Rounds straight away follows up by stressing legal resources, it makes you think, okay, are the current laws enough to handle this faster process under potentially bigger executive power while still making sure everyone gets due process?
And that leads us right to his very clear statement.
Yeah.
We expect the executive branch to follow the law.
Yeah.
Now, okay, on the face of it, that sounds obvious. Like, of course they should follow the law.
You'd hope so.
But the fact he's saying it so directly, right after talking about accelerated deportations and wartime powers, it makes you ask, why state the obvious so clearly right then?
It probably highlights a concern, right? That speeding things up, maybe using these special powers could risk cutting corners on legal standards or due process.
Yeah, seems likely.
It really underlines how important those checks and balances are.
Yeah.
Making sure that chasing a policy goal doesn't accidentally stomp on established legal rules.
It's almost like the senator is saying, look, we support the goal, more deportations faster, but how we do it is absolutely crucial. It has to be legal.
Precisely.
It highlights that you can't just focus on the outcome and ignore the process, especially when you're dealing with something that affects people's lives so drastically.
That's exactly it. And if you connect this to the sort of bigger picture, in that same CNN piece, we don't have all the details, obviously, but there's another headline in the feed.
Yeah, I saw that.
It says something like, "My husband is not a gang member. Wife of mistakenly deported man speaks out."
Right. And even though we're not digging into that specific story today, just having it there in the same report, it's a pretty stark reminder of the human side of all this, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It really points out that mistakes can happen. And when you talk about potentially speeding these processes up, the risk of errors and the massive consequences of those errors, well, it becomes even more important to think about.
That's a great point. While Senator Rounds is talking policy, the big picture, the legal lines, this other story brings it right down to the real-world impact if those legal lines aren't carefully followed. It puts the focus right back on the practical side, the how and the potential for mistakes when speed is maybe the main goal.
So for everyone listening, the key tension that seems to be emerging here is this apparent drive for fast action on immigration enforcement, clearly a priority for some,
Right.
alongside this fundamental need to stay within the existing legal system. They aren't necessarily opposites, but this news suggests there's a constant balancing act needed, ensuring one doesn't undermine the other.
And Senator Round's comments really shine a light on that how. The mention of wartime powers by the Trump administration, that signals the faster deportations.
Yeah.
But the immediate reaction from this GOP senator shifts to how it should be done. Legally. Respecting the frameworks we already have, even if using expanded powers. That's where it gets complex implementation, safeguards, due process. All that comes sharply into view.
This also opens up some really important questions for us to think about, doesn't it?
Okay.
Like when Senator Rounds talks about legal resources, what exactly does he mean? Are they enough to handle a faster process without risking mistakes or compromising fairness?
Good question.
What checks are actually in place now, or what might need beefing up to make sure things are accurate and fair when deportations are expedited? And the really big one underneath it all, what are the actual legal arguments for and against using wartime powers for domestic immigration stuff?
These are definitely the critical things to look into further. Immigration law is already so complex, right?
Okay.
And throwing wartime powers into the mix just adds another whole layer of complexity and potential argument about how far executive power can go, especially when you're talking about individual liberties.
So let's try and wrap this up. We've done a deep dive into this statement from a Republican senator. He's publicly acknowledging, maybe even defending, the idea of accelerated deportations using these invoked wartime powers.
Right, there's that element of defense or support for the goal.
But that support comes with this really clear, non-negotiable condition attached.
Yes, the expectation that whatever the executive branch does, it absolutely must follow the law. Full stop.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay.
Think about that dynamic, that inherent tension between wanting quick results and the absolute need to stick to legal principles, especially in a sensitive area like immigration.
Can those two things, speed and legality, always coexist smoothly? It's a tough question.
Yeah. And what responsibility do the different parts of government, the executive, Congress, the courts, have in making sure both security and justice are protected?
Exactly. This tension between the outcome you want and the process you have to follow to get there. That's something really crucial to keep in mind whenever you hear discussions about immigration or, frankly, any exercise of executive power.